Hello and welcome. This is the September edition of the Electric Imp Community Hangout. We missed August. It was a bit of a busy month, so we're jumping right in at the start of September. And the next one is actually going to be the first Thursday in October at the same time, 2 to 3 p.m. PST. And we'll make sure to advertise that a little bit as it gets closer. So I'm Matt Haynes. I'm the community manager at Electric Imp. And with me today are two of our engineers, Tom Byrne and Aaron. You guys can say hello.
Hello.
Hello. So we have a whole bunch of really neat stuff that we're going to talk about today. We're going to show you some new features in the IDE, some new ways to track whether your stuff is broken or our stuff is broken, I guess. Some cool new projects, new features in Release 30. As well as some new programs that are coming up. So it's going to be packed and really, really fun. So I guess we're going to start with this cool new feature in the IDE. So I'm going to see if I can pull up my screen share here. This is always kind of dicey. So this is the IDE that everybody knows and loves. What you may or may not have noticed is up on the top here, there's this new little status drop-down. And when everything is nice and happy, it's just going to say status. And in here, you can see if there's been any incidents recently, or if there's any scheduled maintenance coming up. So this is a great way to sort of make sure you don't plan your demos during a time when our server may be experiencing restarts or things like that, as well as these sort of individual components. And these little OKs will change to, I think, yellow or red dots. If there's any problems with either the IDE, the developer servers, which is what most of your imps probably run on, or the production servers.
Yeah. This was, I think we did this not because this happens frequently, but because I think something a lot of people have asked for on the forums is more transparency about when we intend to do things on the back end, which should generally not cause any changes to how the service is actually working and provided, but this gives you a sanity check.
Yeah.
When you're not sure if something's working the way you expect it to work, you can check and see if we know about that already.
And so if you actually go to status.electricimp.com, this is where you can get sort of the most information, as well as up in the top right-hand corner here, you can subscribe to updates through email, text messages, Twitter, or an RSS feed. So you can actually get sort of information pushed to you when there are problems, if it's really critical. And as Tom mentioned, this is all sort of gearing towards transparency about uptime and when we do have issues. So we're trying to be much more obvious about when things go wrong, talk about how long they went wrong for, so you can see some outages and some other things, some scheduled maintenance. And this is just sort of, as we grow and mature, this just becomes sort of more important. Lots of services that I use that are hosted services, I like to know if it's broken or if I'm broken. So this is a good starting point. So that's the new status feature in the IDE. Do you guys have update? Are you guys subscribing to updates?
Yeah.
I think I get text messages. I think you get tweets.
I get tweets as text messages.
Oh, that's cool.
I've always used imp status on Twitter. I like that best.
Yeah, and so we're still going to be using @imp status on Twitter, and a lot of this is sort of integrated with it. So when we post information here, it will also get pushed to imp status. So that's another good way to keep up to date with what's going on.
I also spend my entire life in the IDE, so I get them there.
Yeah, our actual first warning is always Aaron.
I'm the canary.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is the much-awaited Release 30. The last hangout that we did, that was a little over a month ago, I think we said Release 30 is about to be released.
Later today.
Later today. I don't think it was later that day, but it was supposed to be very soon. We found some critical bugs that we didn't want to push out because updating firmware is never a pleasant experience. But Release 30 went out last week. Just about everybody should be on it, and everybody who's a developer, their imp should be upgraded if they've been online.
I think the developer imps are all now running 30.10,
Yeah.
30.10. So you can actually check that by running imp.getSoftware version, imp.getSW version, and that'll show you what version you're running. So if you're not sure yet and want to make sure, here's what it looks like.
Get software version. So you'll get a little thing at the bottom, and it should say this little tag, which is actually a git commit tag that we use for versioning, and then the release number and the date it was released. So everybody should be on release 30.10 unless you have strange imps that are on different versions for testing purposes that we might have talked to you about. But other than that, that should be good. And there's lots of new features. So in the release notes section of our Dev Center, there is the release 30 release notes. Do you guys want to talk about some of the cool, exciting new things in it and what it brings about?
Sure. I'm trying to remember the full change list.
We can go through this. I mean,
yeah, let's do it.
A lot of the really big, exciting features about Release 30 are actually ones that you hopefully won't see, or you won't necessarily see. So there's improved drivers for the Broadcom Wi-Fi chip that handle basically the Broadcom Wi-Fi chip crashing more gracefully. So you shouldn't be getting the error message of like imp restarted, reason Wi-Fi error. The imp should now just sort of recycle the process that's managing the Wi-Fi behind the scenes and not restart your imp.
Yep.
There's major improvements to blink up. So once your imps are on release 30 or above, you should have much fewer problems blinking up, which is really, really good, especially for our commercial customers who are shipping with release 30 instead of...
If you're an Android user, this particularly applies to you, because iOS has been pretty solid, I think pretty consistently, but Android, we've made changes over the last year or so as to how that's actually sent. And the receiver is tuned better with release 30, so it will catch what you're saying more often.
And this is all for devices that have been updated to release 30. Mm-hmm. So if you're using a fresh imp card, that's probably still running like version, I think it's like 7 or 12 or something. It's a couple years old because we made all the imps a long time ago and we flashed them with an old version. So you still need to blink those up, probably with legacy mode if you're on an Android, with that little box ticked. But after that, you should have a much better experience.
Yeah. There were two API changes that are like my absolute favorite for this release. I think one is probably your favorite too, on
the read string.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody who's ever tried to implement someone else's serial protocol on the imp with the UART has probably gotten really frustrated having to do byte-by-byte reads and window out packets and stuff like that. And so now we have, I believe it's UART.readString and UART.readBlob. And they'll actually let you take the whole buffer and just dump them straight to an object all at once. So you can have that inside your UART callback, and instead of having to pick characters out until you get a -1, you just, here's the buffer. So I'm really excited about that one.
I still haven't used it.
Yeah?
I'm very excited to try.
Took it for a test drive last week, and it was quite nice.
I suspect this will be really cool for all of those people who are using electric imps as Wi-Fi bridges for Arduinos.
Yeah.
You'll be able to pass information back and forth a little bit more easily, at least on the imp side.
Sure.
So
the other thing that I think was huge, it used to be when you're setting up your hardware, you do your aliasing if you're going to do that. So you say chip select low is pin 1, chip select low configure, chip select low write. And now configure and write can all be done in a single call. So configure now takes another parameter at the end that sets the initial state of the pin.
This is a small but cool change that I was actually going to show later. So when you configure something to be a digital out, you can finally give it a default value.
Yep, like a good programmer.
Like a good programmer. Like the good programmers we all are.
Yes.
So that's very exciting. And I guess the other thing that Release 30 brings about is support for IMP003. So
sure.
We have a bunch of evaluation boards out with some of our customers. And if you're a customer and you're building something that needs to be really low cost and sort of high volume, I think right now it starts at about like 10,000 and above. Then IMP003 might be a good solution for you. It's a lot harder to build a full commercial product with it because you need to go through FCC certification yourself and do some antenna design, which I've been led to believe is difficult and expensive from people much smarter than myself. So that's exciting.
We are looking at ways to make even that difficult portion of designing with IMP003 a little bit more accessible and a little bit less costly. But these things take a lot of time. It's mostly somebody has to do the work at least once and probably more than once, and we'll see how many times it's actually got to be done after that. So.
Cool. So you've been playing with the evaluation board for the Info 3.
Yeah, it's a fun little board.
So do you want to talk about a bit about what's on it, and maybe also about you've been working on a new board for the Info 2 as well, which is pretty cool.
Sure, yeah. So the Info 3 kind of, for those who have been working with Electric Imp for a long time, some people might have had or still have a HANA board that's like a breakout board that comes with a bunch of stuff already on it. So you have temperature sensor, and you've got some buttons, and you have a potentiometer, and some servo headers and stuff like that. And ultimately, I think April became kind of the de facto standard because it's easier to build it into things than it is with HANA. But Info 3, since it's targeting more commercial applications, we often have to send this out to people so that they can just evaluate our platform, have a look at what it's like to develop just whatever for whatever purpose. So this is kind of a self-contained board. It can run off the AA's or AAA's, I've forgotten.
AAA's, I think.
Two small batteries.
Two small batteries. It's got some buttons on it. It has the imp and its antenna are actually contained as sort of like a daughter board that plug in through a board-to-board connector. And then on the main board, the pins are broken out, and also it has a small audio amplifier, so you can actually drive some headphones or a small speaker. It has a microphone and an anti-aliasing filter, so you can record audio with it. It has temperature sensor. I believe it has a humidity sensor. It has an accelerometer, temperature and accelerometer. LEDs.
Lots and lots of good.
Yeah, so it's just the kind of the basic. Figure out how to blink an LED from the internet, and then see what else you can do once you start moving data around. And we've enjoyed having that so much that we decided that Info 2 probably needs something sort of like that as well, like an evaluation board or just kind of a get started quick kit. So I've been working on designing a board that would kind of mimic that for Info 2. And we've been through a couple of revisions, mostly dealing with how is it to actually use this? Does it make sense where you plug things in? Does it fit in the kind of breadboard we all want to use? That kind of thing. So we have a new revision that's just going to come back from Fab next week, and hopefully by next Community Hangout I'll have it built up and I can show it off a little bit, and then maybe we'll see where it goes from there.
And both the Info 2 and the Info 3 evaluation boards are open designs, right?
Info 2 will be, at least. I'm not sure if the Info 3 is one that we'll publish.
Okay.
Just because it might not wind up being. I think we probably will, but I'm not sure exactly.
Okay, so the Info 2 definitely. So if you want to get some of those made, you should be able to, or to convince some industrious community member who fast forwards to do it. Maybe.
Yeah, and we have high hopes of actually finding some way to have some of them made and be able to point people toward where they can just buy one or two. But all these things and more probably in the October Hangout.
Yeah. And the one other thing that I wanted to note about Release 30, last Hangout, it turns out I lied to everybody, and I said that one of the cool new features in Release 30 was the SpyFlash API, and that it was going to be available for all of the imps. So I thought that there's going to be this new API so that you can talk to the imp SpyFlash, and it'll give you a small amount of sort of local permanent storage that would stay there even if you power cycled your device or it lost power. But that's not true. It's only for the Info 3, which also has the external flash. So no love there, but that's all right.
Is that going to change?
I don't know. I know there's been some discussion of like opening up some kind of internal storage, but that's a ways out. I don't think it's gone past sort of tentative discussions yet.
Yeah. We do have a pretty good Squirrel driver for SpyFlash still that's seen improvement and kind of acted as the template for the SpyFlash API that's going to be built in. So if you have need for a SpyFlash and you put one in your design, or you've connected up to a SparkFun SpyFlash breakout board or something like that,
you can actually get tiny little 8-pin through-hole SpyFlashes.
Oh yeah.
SparkFun. So it's, if you do want some storage, it's not. We have this really nice class that basically lets you treat it like basically like a file system, I think, or like just sort of a dump of storage.
It's sort of like an EEPROM.
Yeah.
You can read and write to it, but it does things like it takes away the need to watch out for page boundaries where the address space will wrap, and So it takes away some of the headache of working with that specific type of hardware. So that's all in the Electric Imp repo under References. And I think that it's References Hardware SPI Flash is where you'll find that if you need it.
And we'll throw a link down in the video description once this has been posted. One of the other cool things in the Dev Center that's new that I wanted to show off was the new landing page. This is something Tony's been working on. One of the questions we get a lot is, how can I stay up to date with what's new in the Dev Center? And we have this new and featured content section right at the top. So you can see there's some cool new articles. There's something about the Info 03, so we have a guide for how all of that code works. Some of that code, there's some things with audio and other peripherals that might be able to be ported to other imps. Maybe not one-to-one, but it's a good starting place to look for audio in the EVP guide. Tony's also written an excellent article about bindenv and call and acall and some of the very nitty-gritty details about scope in Squirrel and Electric Imp. And this great resource for porting Arduino code to the imp, which is all about how to look at an Arduino library and make the changes you need to bring it into Electric Imp land.
Yeah. The audio section in that EVP guide, I will say, is totally portable to the other imps. It doesn't use the onboard SPI Flash. It's I don't think it does. No. It's designed to be as simple as possible. The whole point of writing it in that EVP guide was so that in 100 lines somebody could easily see how the fixed frequency DAC and the sampler work. And we actually have, there's another document that goes, it's in the developer resources that's not in the EVP guide that goes on for a couple of pages with some nice pictures that shows you how audio is buffered and what happens when you overrun a buffer or underrun a buffer and how to start it and stop it and things like that. So if you're interested in getting into audio, I definitely recommend checking out the Developer Resources Center and looking for that guide. I think it's called Audio Waveforms in the Imp.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to
link to that too.
Link to that as well.
Yep.
So if you guys have any questions while we're on the air, or I guess after, you can tweet them with the hashtag #ImpQuestions. And we'll do our best to get them answered while we're still chatting. So the next thing we're going to do is show off some cool new libraries that we've been working on. We write lots of code at Electric Imp in Squirrel, and we like to share as much of that as possible. And all of it you can find in our GitHub reference library at github.com/electricimp/reference. And we've had some great contributions from community people and a few more that just need to be cleaned up a little bit before they get brought into the repo, but there were, I think, 3 that we wanted to show off today. So one of them is a hardware library for the pulse sensors. So this, I think, we actually talked about last time in the last Hangout. It's this little, let's see if we can switch this real quick. So it's a little pulse sensor that you can get from SparkFun and I think Adafruit. Just basically uses a light that kind of flashes and reads back into a photo sensor, and it does some other magical things that make it applicable to read a pulse. I think there's just like an op-amp in there or something to boost the signal. And previously we had this really basic implementation, and since then we've created this much more complete implementation that's closer to what the Arduino library does in terms of like some very simple signal processing, and it makes it a bit more accurate. This guy broke because I've been traveling with it a bunch, but when it was working, once you it's a little finicky in terms of the actual sensor itself. You need to sort of get it on the right place on your finger, and if you move it around a whole bunch, it can give you false readings. But if you're just like kind of hanging out and you have it so that the light's flashing whenever your heart beats, it's eerily close. If you're like sitting there and you can feel your pulse and see the light flashing. So this is a cool one to check out. I'm really excited what people do with this, just because I'm a really big like biometrics nerd, and I think using like information about bodies is cool in projects. So the next one, I'm going to let Aaron talk a bit about a really cool project and bit of code that he's been working on to do, would you say, nefarious things?
Nothing nefarious about what I do ever. This is the Max 3421E chip. I think that's the way it is. It's a USB host chip which we got a breakout board from Circuits at Home, which we've attached to an imp, and it allows us to run as a USB host. The first two drivers we wrote were the keyboard driver and the mouse driver, because they're the most generic ones, and I'm just finishing off one for an FTDI driver as well.
So what kind of things can you do with that, or have you done with that?
Now that's where the nefariousness comes in. No, the simplest project is to put a keyboard onto it and maybe a little display, and then you can use the imp as an input device without any computer or anything larger, at least than an imp attached. You can run it as a mouse input, but the updates are pretty quick, so you've got to have something interesting to do locally rather than sending it over the wire. And we're using it here to connect a whole bunch of fairly complex devices to effectively take a computer, a desktop computer or a laptop computer out of the picture and just attach an imp to the back of it, and then that device can then function. For example, although we haven't implemented one, you could in theory make a wireless printer driver off the back of it.
It would just be very slow.
It would be very slow. That's true, but you could do it.
You could. Could you make the one printer driver to rule them all with that?
It would take a little bit more memory than the input had. If you could program the imp on the fly, where you plug it in, you download the driver for that device in Squirrel and execute it, then you'd probably get away with it.
That could be cool.
Yeah.
What about there's all those USB desktop toys?
We haven't got any in here. We need to get some rocket launchers and things like that. Yeah. That would be pretty easy.
Lots of terrifying, non-compliant devices.
Yeah.
Yeah, just send your manager a big expense report for Think Geek or something.
Sounds good. So we've put the first version of the drivers in GitHub. I did that yesterday. So it's sitting under reference/hardware/Max3421E.
That's the chip we're using.
That's the chip we're using, exactly. And a couple of people have already built it up and got it working, but it starts off with the Circuits at Home board, but you can always take it off and put it onto your own if you're fabbing your own boards. So we will have a reference design at some stage for that, I suspect.
Yeah, we definitely will. We have one that we're actually evaluating right now. It's done. It works. We've made some revisions to it, but we're still determining if it's the golden master that we're going to release and publish and write a page about. But we definitely will finish a reference design and publish it for USB.
I've always wanted a keyboard on my imp.
Just to type into your imp.
Yeah, I want to put the Wi-Fi password in through keyboard rather than link up one day.
That could be a neat implementation. The one thing that people probably can't see from this, which looks like kind of a bummer, is that it looks like you're using every single pin on an April. So you need all 6.
There's 6 on the...
All 6 pins on the April to get this chip running.
Yes. The one you could probably get away without would be the reset pin, because we don't end up resetting it, but we use all the others.
Do you use the interrupt pin?
Yes.
Your implementation?
Yes. Whenever you push a device into it, it throws an interrupt to say that there's a new device there.
Got it.
So if I plug the hub into this, can I get messages from multiple USB
Hubs are not supported, but we're hoping somebody in the community will want to add hub support to it.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
It takes a lot more.
On that one?
Yeah. It takes a lot more work to track every device that's connected when you have a hub. At the moment, we're only tracking one device that's connected to it, and you put in a second one, and it will just say, sorry, don't know what to do.
Cool. The last library we're going to talk about, this is one that I'm really excited about. We've been working with Pubnub a whole bunch recently, and we actually have a joint hackathon that's going on this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're in the Bay Area, you should be able to search Eventbrite for like Electric Imp and Pubnub Hackathon. And you can come show up and hack on some cool code. So Pubnub is a web service that allows you to really easily do like publish and subscribe systems. So it works a little bit like agent.on and device.send, but across sort of across the internet. So lots of people use it for building chat apps or anything that sort of requires real-time messaging. And we've implemented 2 things with this. We've implemented, I'm going to do some live code demos for this, which is always risky. Actually, they're not going to be live code demos. So the basic Pubnub library allows you to essentially talk to the Pubnub service and send and receive messages. Oh, my secret keys that were supposed to be hidden. I made this function called super secret keys so that nobody would see my keys, but there they were. So it allows you to basically send messages to Pubnub and subscribe to messages. So what my device is doing is over on the device side, every quarter second, it's checking the hardware.light level, which is the light level for the blink up sensor. And if it's changed by more than, I think, 5%, then it sends it up to the agent. So it allows you to sort of dynamically send updates so that you can poll really, really quickly, but you only send information when it changes. On the agent side, whenever I get a light message, I publish it to a channel, and when I publish it to the channel, it automatically broadcasts it to anything else with my Pubnub credentials that is subscribed to that channel. So that could be a web page, it could be another device, it could be an app, or like a node server, or anything else that's running with the Pubnub library. At the same side, I have this subscribe function, which lets me listen for events that can be generated by anything that can talk on the same channel. And in this case, we're listening for this LED channel, and whenever we get a message, we parse it to check if some information that we want exists in it, and if it is, we send it down to the device. So I'm going to run this, and over, where's my terrible, terrible web page? So I have this little terrible Pubnub page that I made. Let's see if this works. So whenever I cover or uncover my IMP, the top part changes to show what the current light level out of 100 is. So it goes gray and white, and it's pretty snappy and responsive. And then there's some on-off buttons, which if you may be able to see this. When I click the on and off buttons, you can see a little LED turning on and off, and it's nice and snappy. So this is a cool way of, with fairly little code, sending messages from an IMP to a web page, which I know is something that a lot of people want to do and a lot of people struggle with. So this example is published. It's a really great starting point. It shows you how to get information from a web page to the device, and from the device to the web page. And this is also, I think we wrote an article for the community blog about it.
In particular, you don't need to know the agent URL or the agent ID because you're not talking to the agent directly. You talk to Pubnub as
yes. In this particular example, you do because of how I set up the security and everything else. But typically, you wouldn't need to so long as you had the same publish and subscribe keys. The other bit that we did for Pubnub, which is the part that I'm really excited about, is we created this class called Messagebus. So one of the things that people frequently request that is on our sort of eventual roadmap, I think, that hasn't really been scheduled yet, is being able to send messages from device to device really easily. And that's what this Messagebus is about. So it basically takes the Pubnub object, it wraps it up in some more functionality, and makes it even simpler to send messages between devices. So the idea behind this was, if I have two IMPs, so I have one here and one on the back of my computer, I should basically be able to send messages between them as easily as like from my device to my agent, or the other way around. So both of these are running the same code right now, and it's set up so that whenever you press the button on one, it broadcasts a message to this Messagebus, and anybody who's listening for that can listen for a button press event and do something with it. So right now they're both listening for it, and when they get a button press event, they light up their LED, or they change the state of it. And that's basically all this example does, and I'll show the code in a minute, but let's see if this is working. So when I press the button on this guy, my LED over here lights up, and when I press the button on this one, the LED over here lights up. And this is a really sort of trivial example, but I really like blinking LEDs, and it sort of shows the bare bones you need to get started. And the really cool part about this is there's these two classes, the Pubnub and the Messagebus class, which you can grab from GitHub. And then outside of that, we create our Messagebus object with Pubnub, and then all we need to do is messagebus.on. It works exactly like device.on and device.send, and agent.on and agent.send. where you can send any arbitrary data, and you can create a callback for when you get a specific message. So whenever the button is pressed on the device side, we do an agent.send button. And over here, we have our device.on button, and all we do is basically forward that information to the message bus with messagebus.send. And then a little bit higher up, we have messagebus.on button with a callback function with a parameter, just like device.on, and we're just sending the message down to the device. So we're doing device-to-device communication with a few lines of code. And that's pretty powerful, and I'm really excited to see what people do when you can do sort of this more generic thing. And this is cool because this is two devices talking to each other, but this could potentially be, hundreds or thousands that are all listening to a common message bus. And the one feature that's not demonstrated here, you can also listen for messages from a specific device or a specific UUID, which by default is the last part of your agent URL. So I imagine like a web interface with like drag and drop arrows like the old planner, where you could say, when you get a message from this device, trigger this action on the other device. So this is the startings of, I think, something cool, and I really hope that people in the community contribute to it and do cool things. Are there any other cool libraries you guys know about that have been pushed recently, or that people have added?
Pubnub was the last one I worked on that I think is like ready for people to pick it right up and use it right now.
Yeah.
My head has been buried in USB for weeks now. So
that's fair. Cool.
Can't even think outside that.
So the last couple things we wanted to mention, in the middle of September, I forget the exact dates, we're going to be at Maker Faire New York, the World Maker Faire. We're not going to have a booth there, but I'm going to be wandering around with my bright blue hair and a bag full of imps and t-shirts and goodies. And so if you want to come say hello and meet me, you can send us a tweet or email or poke me on forums, and we'll find a time and a place to meet. And if you show me cool imp projects, I'll probably give you cool imp swag. And along with that, we just talked about 3 cool libraries. So there's the USB library, the Pulse library, and the Pubnub one. And so for next month, we're going to be giving away a C3VO to the person who makes the coolest project using one of those projects or one of those libraries in the next month, and sends us some information about it. So you can either do an Instructable or a blog post. If you want to write a blog post for a community blog about it, that would be cool too. But so make something cool with one of those libraries, send us your project, open source it, and if we think it's really cool, we'll send you a C3VO, which is one of the cool boards from the Make Deck that has an onboard LiPo charger, so really good for battery projects.
It's good for real small stuff if you want to do a small demo.
Yeah. And the last thing we're going to mention is coming up right away in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be announcing some information about a new beta program. So we're looking for some people from the community to get more involved with our QA process and to help us look at some features before they're released to the general. So that's going to involve, you'll get a little bit more information about features that are coming soon. You'll get a chance to try them out a little bit earlier. And we're hoping to do some sort of focused user studies where we might sit down with you over like a Google Hangout or a call for somewhere between like half an hour and an hour to watch how you play with the IDE or new tools, and get sort of very direct feedback about what works, what doesn't, and hopefully improve our products that way. That's it until next time. Did anybody post any questions?
No questions over here. I was just looking.
Right. We did. We previously had questions in the chat as well, but for some reason I couldn't find that today. So we'll make sure to get that sorted out for next time.
I liked it. It's better in the chat, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll do that.
So the next Hangout is going to be the first Thursday of October. There's already an event on the community calendar page. So if you have any questions or projects that you want featured during that Hangout, just post a comment, send us an email, or tweet or post on forums, and we'll make sure that we talk about that in the next one. And I think that's it. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.